Hi, I'm Ron Ewins and welcome to my YouTube channel. In the past, a few people have asked me what I do about framing my pictures, so I thought I'd make a short video about how I do this. In the early days, I used fairly rudimentary equipment, but it was very slow. The results were often a bit shoddy, and so gradually I've invested more and more in framing. Because I use pastels, I think it's always best that pictures are framed as soon as they can be if you feel they have any value. And I'm up to about 50 or 60 paintings now, and I've only ever had one framed. It was quite a large one, and it cost me about £115 to have it framed. So you can see that if I continued to frame all my pictures, I would have spent a very large amount of money on it so far. So rather than do that and see very little for it, I've gradually invested in better and better ways of making my frames. Here you can see the most expensive piece of equipment, which is a mitre for cutting the frames to 45-degree angles very accurately. Once I've cut out the four sides of the frame, I glue the joints. And then use the second fairly large piece of equipment that I've invested in, which is a back underpinner. It's very securely holds the two corners together. It clamps them into position, and then using your foot pedal, it drives right-angled pins across the joint. You'll see the green light come on. Shows the pin has been driven right in. On a fairly large frame like this, I'll put 3 pins in at each corner. Then I gradually work my way around until the 4 pieces of frame form one solid frame. This is very solid. The next step is to check that the glass fits into the frame I've built. I used to cut my own glass, but on one occasion I had a large piece of glass which shattered into about 5 pieces when I cut it. So I decided after that perhaps having glass cut was one thing the professionals would be best at. So now I buy the glass from a very friendly supplier at a very reasonable price, and then I bring it back and build the frame around it. The most nerve-wracking thing is that I haven't made the frame quite big enough to hold the glass, because then you've either got to get another piece of glass or build another frame. In this case, I was okay. You only really get one opportunity to clean the glass on the inside, so I take a lot of care to make sure it's perfectly clean. Then it's back to the mitre cutter to cut out some pieces of spacer which will fit around the inside of the frame between the glass and the picture, to make sure that the picture is held back, in this case about 1 centimetre from the glass. I glue these in the corner, and also I put a dab of glue in the middle of the longer spaces, because sometimes they can bend and push out from the edge of the frame and look a bit unsightly, especially if they're longer than maybe 2 feet. This is the last spacer going in. I tend to make them fit quite tightly in the frame. Once the 4 spacers are fitted in, the next thing to do is to make sure that they're all firmly down, and then to push them against the side of the frame so that they're not bowing in any way and they're held down. And to do this, I just use a few pieces of old mat board. Now it's time to cut the backing board, which I buy in bulk from a framing supplier, and also the mat board, which I also buy in bulk these days. In the early days, I had a fairly cheap cutter for the board, and it was a case of buy cheaply, buy twice, because it was rubbish. This cutter also cuts out the hole in the mat board, but unfortunately in this video I got in the way, so you can't actually see me doing it. Now you attach the tape to the back of the pastel mat paper. This is acid-free tape. You buy it in any artist store. Acid-free to make sure that nothing affects the picture in the longer term. This is the way I've found is the easiest to do it. You start turning the picture around the other way and putting the tape on, you risk damaging the pastel. Now you have to fit the matting board exactly in position on the pastel, and the way I do this is to line it up at the bottom, adjust the 2 sides so that they're also in position, and then just push the tape down so it's now bound. This is probably an hour and a half or so later, and the glue has set. So now the glass is held absolutely firmly between the recess in the frame and the spacers, and the spacers are themselves glued into position. You can give the pastel a bit of a tap on the back if you're worried about it dropping any dust before you get to this stage, but usually with pastel mat you never get any dust coming off anyway, so I don't usually worry these days. This is 2 further pieces of tape to make the T-hinge, which is what is recommended. Obviously I've pre-checked that the backing board and the mat fit within the frame. That's something that can be adjusted if it's slightly out, but it's always best to have it a millimetre or 2 smaller than the frame itself. And this is another relatively cheap investment, but worth every penny. This just puts in the flexible pins that hold the backing board in position and make everything firm. The pin, if there's ever a problem with the picture, then these pins can be bent back quite easily, and the backing board can be taken out. The metal is such that it can then be pushed down again by hand and to reseal the picture when you've cured whatever problem you might have had. It's a very good idea to seal the back of the picture with this. This is just packing tape, brown paper tape. And the reason for this is that you've still got very small gaps all the way around between the backing board and the frame, and these seem to have enormous attraction to very small insects. I use my own not patented method for wetting the tape. It's just an old plate with a crack in it. There's a bit of water that lays down the bottom, get it into position and just pull the tape through the puddle of water. So now the picture's all sealed up, and the only thing we need to worry about is how it's going to be hung. And there are two methods that I use for hanging pictures, either with string, and which is what I'm going to do here, or there is an alternate method which some galleries insist you do, which is to use mirror plates, which are sort of stick out the side of the painting and can be screwed on the wall. I guess they have their own reasons, maybe insurance or something, for making sure that paintings can't fall off the wall or have strings break or whatever else. For my own use, I tend to just use these D hinges, and I used to buy those in art shops, but if you buy them in small packets with a piece of string, they're extraordinarily expensive for what they are. So you can get these in bulk, and if you're going to do quite a few pictures, I would definitely recommend you get these in bulk. The next thing to worry about is the framing picture wire, as it's called, but most people, most professional people that I've seen don't like wire at all, although they still call it picture wire. And what they use is the this picture hanging string. It's very strong. And I also used to buy this in small packets in art shops. It's a total waste of money, really, because the very large reel that you see there, that's probably going to last me as long as I need it, it's probably only 2 or 3 times the cost of one of those little packets. Ready to go. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed it.